Which heroes should you play as a beginner in Marvel Rivals? As many of you know, Marvel Rivals is a new game that came out in the last couple of weeks. It's very similar to Overwatch 2 if you're familiar with that game. It's a hero shooter pitting two teams of 6 players against each other to capture objectives. It released with 33 heroes, which is a lot when you're just starting out. So I'm here to help you decide which ones to focus on first. These suggestions are a combination of how easy the hero is to play and how large I think their impact can be. This is not a tier list, and it's not a suggestion for who I think the most powerful heroes are. It's simply my list of heroes who have high impact and a relatively low skill floor. That way you can get right into the action and really help your team without having to spend a ton of time practicing just to be decent. These heroes aren't in any particular order, and I'll have a couple honorable mentions at the end. First up is Venom. I think he's very easy to play, especially for a Vanguard hero, which are basically your tank frontline characters that absorb a lot of damage for your team. I like that his basic attack has a little bit of range to it, so you don't have to be standing right next to your enemy in order to hit them. He has great mobility with his left shift, which is Venom Swing, and this combos really nicely with Frenzied Arrival, his F ability. So you can launch yourself up into the air and use F to either damage enemies and knock them up, or gain greater distance if you're trying to escape. Venom also has a really nice on-demand shield with his E, which gets stronger if you wait to activate it until his health is lower. He gets a little bit more crowd control with his right click, called Cellular Corrosion, which slows enemies and does damage after a delay. And one of the nice things about this ability is that you don't have to aim it. You just have to be near enemy players and it attaches to all of them. He has a wall crawl passive, similar to a few other heroes, but this just gives him even more mobility, and you can even sprint while wall crawling. And if you team up and have either Spider-Man or Penny Parker on your team, you can make them even stronger, allowing them to do some extra AoE damage. And finally we have his ult, Feast of the Abyss, which does damage to all enemies within its range when you activate it. It does more damage the more health your enemies have, and gives you a shield based on how much damage it does. So Venom doesn't require a lot of skill shots to do well, or even perfectly timing your abilities. His ult and his E give him really strong shields, and his left shift and F abilities give him a ton of mobility for either diving further into a fight or jumping back out to stay alive. Next up is Scarlet Witch. She's really forgiving as far as her basic attack goes. You just have to get your reticle close to your target and it will still hit them. She also never has to reload or recharge her basic attack, which means you can just keep holding down left click and just dealing damage to anyone you get your reticle near. Her left shift makes her invulnerable and allows her to fly a short distance. This makes her very hard to lock down and is actually one of the reasons I really like Scarlet Witch when the enemy team is playing more burst-focused assassins. This ability has 2 charges, giving you some flexibility if you want to delay an enemy longer, allowing your team to come and help you, or if you want to use one of the charges to reposition while still having another in case you have to escape. Her E creates a stun field, which is fantastic in choke points. Or anytime you're up against a melee character, you can just throw it down at your feet, and if they want to hit you, they'll have to step into the field and get stunned. Her spacebar ability lets her slow fall, so you can use this in combination with her left shift to stay close to enemies in the air, allowing you to get in range of her basic attack. She even gets some splash damage with her right click ability, and you can recharge this attack by using your left click. Her team-up buffs Magneto, incentivizing one of your teammates to play a Vanguard, which is honestly a pretty nice perk since a lot of people seem to avoid playing Vanguard a lot of the time. And her ult has the potential to wipe entire squads by one-shotting anyone in range. It does have a bit of a wind-up time that the other team can use to kill or CC you, or even just run out of range. So I would suggest finding a way to flank the enemy team, then fly up above them with your left shift, making them less likely to see you coming before starting the ult. The third hero on my list is Squirrel Girl. She has a massive amount of burst damage on every single basic attack. The acorns also bounce if they don't hit a player first, so you can redirect them off walls, ceilings, or the floor to hit players that other heroes wouldn't normally be able to attack, like if they're around a corner or something. Because of the bounce and the AoE damage, you don't have to be incredibly accurate with Squirrel Girl to have a huge impact on a fight. Sometimes just spamming attacks into a choke point, like a hallway, is enough to win a fight for your team. She also has good mobility with her left shift tail bounce. A lot of times, you really benefit from being able to shoot down at your opponents, kind of like when you're using a rocket launcher in Halo. So this tail bounce can be a great way to position yourself up high. Her E gives her a quick reload for her basic attack, but also allows her to use a non-ult ability without the cooldown. Her right click roots an enemy in place if it hits them, making shots easier to land, and also enabling Squirrel Girl to create some distance from melee enemies. If you use this in combination with her E, you can lock down a character for a long time. And her ult, while not one-shotting players like Scarlet Witch, does a solid amount of damage without much risk, or even much accuracy needed on Squirrel Girl's part. You kind of just aim it towards the enemy, and then it'll pass through and keep bouncing off of walls, potentially hitting the same enemy multiple times, which can actually just kill them outright. And I forgot to mention her team-up ability. If she has a Spider-Man on her squad, she gets access to an AoE root, giving her even more CC and making it really easy to get off a ton of AoE damage with her acorns. Her kit is really easy to pick up for new players, and her damage is insane on grouped up enemies. Fourth on our list is Mantis. Her basic attacks have a very fast projectile speed, which means that you don't have to worry about accounting for distance as much as some other heroes. She has a good escape tool with her left shift, which puts an enemy to sleep if she hits them. Her E gives a damage boost on an ally, and she can put this on multiple allies at once as long as there are life orbs available, which are indicated by these leaf icons near the middle of the screen. She regains those over time and can also get them back by landing critical hits with her basic attack. Similar to her E, she can also boost her own damage with F. Her right click is her primary heal, which consumes life orbs to give her allies a heal over time. Just like her E, she can put this heal over time on multiple allies at the same time as long as she has life orbs available. And the great thing about it being a heal over time is that you can place the heal on one of your allies and then continue doing whatever else you're doing while your ally is still being healed, unlike some other strategists that require you to actively heal your target the entire time. Her passive gives her a nice movement speed boost when she's at full health, and if she's injured, she automatically gets healing over time whenever she uses a life orb. This includes when she uses a life orb to give herself a damage boost, to give her allies a damage boost, or to heal her allies. Her team-up lets her use a self-revive if she's killed when she has an Adam Warlock on her team, and her ultimate, Soul Resurgence, gives herself and all of her nearby allies healing over time and a movement speed boost, and any extra healing if your allies are full health gets converted into a shield for a short time. I've used this ability to counter assassins like Psylocke, and this allows me to keep my team alive even through a lot of ultimates as long as the ultimate doesn't one-shot your team like Scarlet Witch or Iron Man. Last on our list is Namor. This might surprise some people, but I think Namor is really strong for new players especially. His basic attack doesn't need to be reloaded or recharged, reduces the cooldown of your E ability, and can make your E ability deal more damage. His left shift ability is very useful, allowing him to dodge certain ground-based ultimates like Jeff the Landsharks and Venoms. It also gives him a nice shield and puts him really high up in the air, which can allow him to reach some difficult areas, especially when you combine it with his spacebar ability, which allows him to slow fall. His E is what I think makes him really useful for newer players. It summons a minion that will attack enemies for you, meaning you don't have to be incredibly accurate with your own attacks to still do damage. You can also increase your minions' damage by landing critical hits with your basic attack or hitting enemies with your right-click ability. The right-click will also cause your minions to attack the nearest enemy that was hit by it, meaning you can make your minions attack a certain target just by hitting them with your right-click. Another cool thing about his E is that you can actually place his minions on moving objectives like this cart, for example. The minions will ride along on the moving objective and still attack enemies that come in range. His team-up ability gives him an extra minion to spawn that also does a little bit more damage than his normal minion. And his ultimate, Horn of Proteus, is an easy-to-land AoE damage-dealing ability that also disables your enemy's mobility skills. So pretty much all of Namor's kit is really easy to use, and a lot of your damage comes from those minions that will be targeting things down for you. This can be really useful if you're having trouble dealing with assassins or really fast, mobility-based characters, because your minions will be able to track them even if you're having a hard time. And the first of my 2 honorable mentions is Iron Man. Iron Man has both a left-click attack and a right-click attack. The left-click does AoE damage, and the right-click does single target damage that's actually really high DPS. His left shift allows him to fly forward very quickly, and his E increases the damage of his left-click and right-click attacks. His F allows him to fire a barrage of missiles anytime he uses his left shift or E abilities. And this micro missile barrage doesn't do a ton of damage, but it does give you a nice little bit of extra splash. His team-up ability with Hulk on his team greatly increases the damage he deals when he uses his E, Armor Overdrive ability. And his ultimate can completely turn teamfights. It's basically a long-range version of Scarlet Witch's ultimate that just one-shots any enemies caught in its range. The reason why Iron Man is just an honorable mention instead of being on the main part of the list is because his abilities largely have to be pretty accurate in order to deal damage. And against enemy teams with a lot of ranged damage dealers, Iron Man can be easy to target down pretty quickly since you're flying up in the air. And our second honorable mention is Jeff the Land Shark. Jeff has the ability to dish out a ton of healing if your allies are standing in a line with his left click. It passes straight through your allies, so you can hit multiple people at the same time. His right click does a surprising amount of splash damage to enemies. And his left shift both heals him and gives him very good mobility. It makes him much harder to hit, though enemies can still hit his fin while using this ability. But he can also climb walls with it, and his E gives either himself or allies a burst of healing as well as a movement speed boost anytime an ally comes into contact with it. When the bubble is triggered by yourself or an ally, if there's an enemy nearby, they'll also be pushed back. So I like to use this as a good self-heal, especially if an enemy assassin tries to jump on me. His passive reduces damage taken from critical hits, which is nice, but a little hard to judge most of the time whether or not that ability makes much of a difference in a fight. His team-up ability allows him to launch frozen orbs with his right-click ability, which I think leaves a slowing field on the ground wherever it makes contact. And his other team-up is with Groot, and it allows him to ride on Groot's shoulder, which reduces incoming damage. I don't often use this team-up, mostly because I don't really trust random players to position well in fights, and if you're on your Groot's shoulders, you're a bit easier to hit, so I don't find this one to be worth it most of the time. And his ult allows him to swallow both enemies and allies. You can choose to spit them out separately in case you grabbed any allies by mistake, and players will often use this ability to spit enemy players off the edge of the map, or even jump off the map while still holding onto them to make sure that the enemy can't use any mobility skills to survive. And that's my list for the 5 heroes and 2 honorable mentions I think every new player absolutely must try. Some of these may have been surprising to people, and again, this is not a tier list or a list of the most powerful heroes in the game. It's just a list of heroes that I think are easy to use while also having a strong impact on the game. But in any case, let me know if your hero made the list, or if you think a hero should or shouldn't be on the list.